Hey everybody, it's 7 o'clock. We're just about to get started here. If I can get somebody to give me a thumbs up or a message in the chat to let me know if you can hear me. Okay, I got one person that say they can hear me. All right, welcome. Welcome to the Trailmaster webinar. This is brought to you by the Idaho Trails Association. My name is Pam Bond. I'm a board member and help put on this presentation series. Tonight, we're going to have Aaron Owen Mayhem, the Backcountry Foodie, with us tonight to talk about how to avoid bonking, how to not hit that wall when you're out hiking or even other biking or running or anything like that. Before we get started, I am just going to talk a little bit about ITA. So throughout this presentation, you probably all are already muted and have your video off, and we'll just stay that way. And if you have any questions, feel free to put them in the chat. And when I'm done with my little segment, and if you have any questions, we can answer a few questions. Otherwise, we'll turn it over to Erin and then just keep track of your questions as they come in. And we'll probably just hold off on a Q&A until the end of her presentation. All right, so just to tell you a little bit about the Trails Association, ITA was founded in 2010. So this year, would have been our 10-year anniversary. Hopefully, we'll still get to have a big party at some point once we're through all of the pandemic stuff and we can get people together. And really, our mission is to promote the continued enjoyment of our Idaho hiking trails. This is through stewardship, taking care of our public lands, and our case doing trail maintenance projects. Tradition, we teach our volunteers how to use traditional primitive trail tools like Pulaski's and crosscut saws. Education, putting on presentations like this, doing outreach at different festivals and gatherings. And then preservation, just being an advocate for preserving our public lands. So just to give you an idea of how ITA has grown over the years, this graph here just shows the amazing amount of growth we've seen in our volunteer hours. So our number of volunteers over the last decade. Even though our hours and our volunteer numbers were down last year because of COVID, we still did a lot of great work. Over 170 miles of trail was cleared. We had 8 week-long projects, multiple, lots of multi-day, one-day projects, over 2,000 some logs pulled off the trail, cut off the trail. We also do trail monitoring. I'll talk about that a little bit more. But still, tons of work coming out of the volunteer hours that we're using to caretake our public non-motorized trails. If you're not familiar with the Idaho Trails Association, please go out to our website, idahotrailsassociation.org, and learn more about us. Best thing you can do is sign up for our newsletter and become a member. Becoming a member really just means giving us a monetary donation of some kind, whatever is meaningful to you on an annual basis. Definitely try and sign up for a trail project. We have trail projects all the way up in North Idaho, down through the Hawaii country, over in the Sawtooth. If there's a wilderness area you want to explore, you can definitely do that on one of our projects. We have a number of family-friendly projects where you can bring out your kids for the day. If you want to get your toes wet, you can come out on a single day or a weekend trip. We do have, we call week-long vacations on these trips. We typically have stock who help pack in supplies and food. You may even have a camp cook. So at the end of a long, hard day, you have somebody out cooking a hot meal for you. A few years ago, we started our women-only weekends. This is kind of my baby program. I love seeing women out there working together. And this year, we actually are going to have 2 women-only week-long. So if you're interested in that, stay tuned for more details. And we also have a youth program where we have a number of week-long specifically geared towards our youth, and I believe it's in the high school age range. We also do have some monitoring projects. So if you don't think that trail maintenance is quite your speed, you could always sign up for a monitoring project. These typically involve, 5, 6, 7 days tromping around in a wilderness area like the Gospel Hump or the Seven Devils area, doing some monitoring of trail conditions or use sites, taking down some data about where we're seeing trails disappearing or where people are setting up camp spots. And really, it's just a big backpacking trip with a little bit of data collection. If you're interested in that, please reach out. And then also just be an advocate for our public lands and our resources. Stay involved and advocate for the resources that you love. I think here pretty soon, gosh, I can't imagine, maybe the end of next month sometime, we should have our seasonal project list available. And one of the perks of becoming a member is you get a month head start on the general public to sign up for a project. So if there's a project that you're interested in that flies you into the backcountry or gets you into the part of the state that you've never been, be sure to sign up early, become a member, and you can sign up even earlier to get your chance to get a spot on that project. So something else I just wanted to mention, last year, the Idaho Department of Parks and Rec Trails Supporter Program got rolled out. And so this is a program that doesn't just support, this isn't specifically supporting the Idaho Trails Association. This is supporting non-motorized trail maintenance throughout the state. That program is managed by the Idaho Department of Parks and Rec. And this is just a voluntary donation-based system. And the cool thing is you can see in the graphic on the right-hand side, every year you get this cool sticker. I believe they're like $15. You can buy them online. And also I think you can buy them at REI. And so that's just a new program that's got started because we just really need to keep doing whatever we can to kind of raise money to take care of the trails that our non-motorized users are using. Something else I just found out the other day, which I didn't know, is Mother Earth Brewing, which I think is out of Nampa, has a flavor of beer out called Forgotten Trail Ale that actually directly supports the IDPR Idaho Trails program. And so a part of the proceeds of that beer, which I ended up buying, goes towards that program as well. So, drink a beer, save some trails. Look for that. I know that they sell it in Albertsons, and I'm sure there's a few other places throughout the valley and probably throughout the state where you can get this, but keep a lookout in your grocery store when you're looking for your next case of beer. Just wanted to let you know about our next upcoming webinar, Backpacking 101. That is next month, March 24th at 7 p.m. We are still in the process of getting those details up on our Facebook page, but I'm sure those will be up soon so you can sign up. And then also something will probably go out in our next newsletter. And just so you know, we are on YouTube, Facebook, Instagram, and on our YouTube channel. All of these presentations that we've been doing, these webinars, are also posted to our YouTube channel. And if you subscribe to our YouTube channel, it will let you know when a new video has been posted. So even if you can't make these presentations the night they happen, you can always go back to our YouTube channel, check out the videos that we've done in the past, share them with your friends or anybody else you think might be interested. So with that, I believe I'm ready to turn it over to Erin. So if nobody has any questions, Erin, I'm going to go ahead and stop sharing my screen and turn it over to you.
Okay. Can everybody see me and hear me? Can you give me a thumbs up or in the chat let us know? Okay, perfect. So my name is Erin Owens Mayhew. I'm an ultralight long distance backpacking dietitian. A little bit about my backstory. I haven't always been ultralight or long distance. It wasn't until I decided to quit my job in 2017 that I wanted to through hike the PCT that I really started focusing on backpacking nutrition, because up until then, like a lot of hikers, I had just been eating Mountain House. So when I started thinking about the PCT, I realized financially I couldn't eat Mountain House for 5 months, nor did I think my body would adjust well to it, because being a dietitian, I eat fairly well. And then once I started figuring out, reading blogs, I realized that the traditional hiker diet wasn't going to work for me because I don't normally eat honey buns and Pop-Tarts and all those kinds of things. So I started panicking like a lot of through hikers, new ones do. Started tinkering around in the kitchen, and I had never done DIY homemade food. So I really started playing around And lo and behold, it's something I'm really passionate about. I love it. It is now my full-time job. And it's also my husband's full-time job. So it was in 2019 that he also quit his job in February, and we live in a camper van. This is all the traveling we've done. We've been in the van now since April of 2019. So now we run Backcountry Foodie, which is our business full-time from the van. A little bit about Backcountry Foodie is that it is an online platform. We're now on phase 2. The initial platform launched in December of 2019. We've completely revised it and revamped it, and the new platform launched in December 2020. We're really proud of it. We're pretty excited. So go check it out, backcountryfoodie.com. What it is all the recipes that I've made over the last 4 years are in there. They're ultralight, meaning that being a dietitian, I've maximized every single bite of nutrition in each gram of food. And again, being an ultralight backpacker now, every gram counts. So I've really done a good job focusing on the amount of carbs and the protein and the fiber and those kinds of things in all the recipes. We also offer a forum in there now, which I moderate. So I'm in there answering questions that you have. We now have master classes, which is just like this one. This is kind of a mini version of what I normally offer. We do these twice a month right now, potentially doing them more frequently. And we offer a workbook, which I'm going to ask Pam to put the link in the chat box for you. We offer a workbook with all of our classes with the tip sheets and recipes, kind of a follow along notes page. Because I tend to talk fast, I get super excited about food. So I like to give the workbook so you can follow along with that. And we're actually working on phase 3 of the website where we're going to do online learning modules. So anything you'd ever need to know about backpacking food and meal planning and dehydrating food, we're going to put it as like an online course. So we're not quite sure when we're going to finish that, but that's the next section of what we're working on. So what I'm going to do is switch over to slides. And if you can keep any questions you have about the talk until the end, then I'll be happy to answer any questions you have at that time. So you can go ahead and put those in the chat box, and then Pam's going to help moderate that. So let me go ahead and get started because I've got a lot I want to cover today. Alrighty, so hopefully you can see my screen. If you can't, send a message to Pam so we can make sure it's all working. There we go. Okay, so today I want to start out with today's talk with a question that I'd like you to think a little bit about. Have you ever considered yourself as a backpacker to be an athlete? Many of the hikers I've spoken with over the years have never given this question much thought. You may not have considered yourself an athlete, but what other sport requires you to carry a heavy backpack, cover varied terrain, suffer through inclement weather, you know, those days when it rains and rains and rains, spend hours upon hours on your feet, climb and descend thousands of feet in a single day, cover up to even 45 miles in a day like those hardcore thru hikers, and do it all with minimal rest day after day while being completely self-sufficient. I personally think backpackers are tremendous athletes. This is the very reason why I'm giving this talk today, because backpackers should fuel their bodies like an athlete. I doubt you'll find an Ironman triathlete that hasn't spent hours upon hours fine-tuning their nutrition for their events. As backpackers, we spend a lot of time researching and fine-tuning our gear, but food oftentimes gets put to the wayside or not even considered until the night before our trip while we're just throwing food in the bag, whatever we find around our house. In my opinion, our bodies suffer just as much, if not more than an Ironman triathletes, because we're on the move day after day while carrying that heavy pack and aren't able to go home and enjoy a freshly prepared meal or a good night's rest in our own bed. So today, you're going to learn how to fuel like an endurance athlete. So what does it mean to hit the wall is what we're going to learn today. How to determine how much you should eat, not what someone else recommends that you should eat, when and how often you should eat while backpacking, the relationship between staying hydrated and recovery, what to do when you hit the wall, and how to prevent it from happening again. My goal for you today is to learn how to not just eat, but to eat well. Okay, so what does it mean to hit the wall? Well, it's pretty unmistakable. It's the point at which you reach a sudden and dramatic reduction in energy. It's more than just feeling tired. Each and every step is an act of will to keep you going. You want to just lie down on the trail and give up. While not everyone will experience it, hitting the wall can be a backpacker's worst nightmare. If you've ever experienced it, you'll likely agree that you know when it happens. More specifically, here are a few signs and symptoms of hitting the wall. Maybe you've experienced a few of these while backpacking, not realizing what was actually happening to your body. Have you ever been moving along just fine at a manageable pace, and then without warning, your legs suddenly turn into cement? Your entire body feels extremely weak. You've suddenly felt angry at your partner for suggesting hiking another mile to find a campsite with a better view, rather than just stopping at a perfectly good spot sooner. Maybe you've experienced slurred speech. Maybe even felt dizzy or lost your way when you're normally an excellent route finder. In the worst case scenario, you may have even started to hallucinate. Hitting the wall is more than just running out of energy. It can put you at greater risk of getting injured, which isn't exactly ideal when you're miles away from your car or in any form of civilization. It's not something you want to experience more than once. So what exactly is going on? Exercise scientists have spent years debating why we hit the wall. I'm not going to go into all the science today, but the current theory is that hitting the wall is a complex interaction of a number of factors, including your muscle glycogen levels, blood glucose levels, as well as what's going on in your brain at the time you hit the wall. Simply put, your body has run out of stored carbohydrate for fuel. Carbohydrates are the body's preferred source of energy. The carbohydrates that we consume in our diet are used almost immediately for energy. What's not used is stored in the form of glycogen in your muscles and liver. When there's not enough carbohydrate consumed via your diet, stored carbohydrates in your bloodstream, muscles, and liver are used to fuel your body instead. At rest, our diet typically provides plenty of carbohydrates to maintain daily functions. You can stay well fueled for hours at a time while not physically active. Although, while enjoying an endurance activity like backpacking, you can quickly burn through your carbohydrate stores. If you don't replace the carbohydrates that are burned for energy via your diet, not only your muscles, but your brain suffers. Now let's take a look at where these carbs are stored in your body. Our blood stores less than 20 calories worth of carbohydrate in the form of glucose. This small amount of carbohydrate is used within a matter of minutes during a high-intensity activity. Our liver stores more than 400 calories worth of glucose, which is in the form of carbohydrate stored in our body. This stored form of carbohydrate is converted into glucose to fuel your brain. Then there's our skeletal muscles that store roughly 2,000 calories worth of carbohydrate, which can be used up within only 90 minutes of a high-intensity exercise. And what does all this mean exactly? Well, if we exercise for more than 90 minutes at a high intensity, we're going to burn through the carbohydrates set aside to provide our body with energy. As a backpacker, we're oftentimes hiking for well over 90 minutes. Another way of looking at it is that our body has roughly 2,400 calories worth of energy stored. That might sound like a lot, but if you're carrying a heavy backpack for 14 hours while summiting a 14,000-foot peak, it's easy to burn through those 2,400 calories. Now, let's take a look at what's going on in your brain and when it's not fed enough glucose, aka carbohydrate. When things get really dangerous is when your brain is no longer supplied with glucose and is unable to function. Your leg muscles might still have glycogen stored, but your brain relies on the stored glycogen in your liver to function. If your liver glycogen is depleted, that's when dizziness, confusion, and disorientation can occur, potentially putting yourself in harm's way. Hitting the wall can be so much more than just running out of energy. I previously mentioned that it only takes 90 minutes of high-intensity activity to burn through those carbohydrate stores. Generally speaking, hiking is a pretty low to moderate intensity activity. So, as a backpacker, how long will it take you to hit the wall? Like most things, there are a number of variables that are taken into account. As I just mentioned, the intensity of the hike plays a huge role in how quickly you'll hit the wall. The more elevation change, the faster you hike, the more difficult the terrain, the faster you'll burn through those carbs. The environment also plays a role, as it can put a tremendous amount of stress on your body, resulting in greater energy needs. And of course, nutrition. If you're not fueling adequately to take into account the intensity of the hike and the environment, you're going to hit the wall. You'll crash and burn even sooner if you start out the day already depleted. When taking into account these variables, you can expect to hit the wall anywhere between only 1 to 3 hours after hitting the trail. Hitting the wall can put an end to your day really quick, which is unfortunate if you drove 3 hours just to get to the trailhead. Now that you know how quickly hitting the wall can bring your long-awaited adventure to an abrupt end, I bet you're interested in learning how to prevent it from happening. Unfortunately, there's no one tactic that works 100% of the time. However, there are a number of ways to prevent it by simply managing your nutrition. So let's start with understanding the source of fuel your diet provides, beginning with carbohydrates. There are two different types of carbohydrates: simple carbohydrates, also known as sugars, and complex carbohydrates, also known as starches. Simple carbohydrates include table sugar, high fructose corn syrup, the sweetener used in soda and fruit drinks, honey, maltodextrins, the sweetener used in many processed foods, hard candy, and gummies. Sports gels and chews can also fall into this category. Simple carbohydrates are great for when you need a quick source of energy because they are rapidly digested after being consumed. Complex carbohydrates include grains, fruits, and vegetables, and provide nutritional value. Complex carbohydrates are not only a source of energy, but they also provide vitamins and minerals, whereas simple carbohydrates do not. Now let's talk about protein as a source of fuel. Protein can be used as a source of energy, but it's not preferred. If the protein you consume via your diet is used for energy, the body has a harder time building and repairing muscle. You might even experience muscle loss if too much protein stored in your body is used as a source of fuel. This can happen when calorie intake is chronically at a deficit, which is often the case with thru hikers that can't keep up with their calorie needs. And then there's fat. Fat can also be used as a source of energy, but it's also not preferred. Fat is less fuel efficient than carbohydrate because it requires more oxygen to be turned into energy. In order to pump more oxygen into your muscles to keep them going, your body slows down dramatically. An average person has enough body fat stored to be used as fuel for a month, but only if you're moving at a snail's pace. If relying on fat, not carbohydrate, your body will struggle when you need a surge of energy to climb uphill or haul your heavy backpack up and down over those multiple blowdowns. Now, I recognize that the low-carb, high-fat ketogenic diet is currently popular, and many hikers follow the diet while in the backcountry. And it can work really well for endurance activities such as low-intensity hiking. As much as 50 to 60% of calories as fat can be used as energy. By that I mean, there is limited elevation change, you're carrying a light pack, and walking on a hard-packed forest trail. Your body is moving along at an easy pace on cruise control. Although, most trails in the backcountry aren't always so low effort. We tend to venture into the backcountry because we like to be challenged. In that case, fat cannot be used exclusively for fuel because your muscles need carbohydrate when a surge of energy is needed. Now let's consider the more typical situation while backpacking. You could be gaining and losing a lot of elevation over the course of the day, carrying a heavy backpack with food and water for several days. You might even be breaking trail while wearing your snowshoes. This type of hiking puts a lot of strain on your body and calls up for 50% of its energy from carbohydrates. If you're not eating well and you burn through your muscle glycogen stores, you begin relying on blood sugar for energy. And at that point, your brain is no longer well fed and you can experience difficulty concentrating and be well on your way to hitting the wall. Now, you know the differences between the sources of fuel to keep your muscles and brain well fed while backpacking. The next step is to know how much of those fuel sources you need specifically. As you're likely already aware, nutrition needs are very individualized, with no one plan working for all. However, what you do before, during, and after your hike can make all the difference. Proper nutrition also needs to be practiced not only on the trail, but daily at home. I'll go into this in greater detail in just a bit. If you continue hitting the wall after what you learned today, consider seeking out the advice from a sports dietitian. He or she can help develop an individualized plan meeting your specific needs. Now let's start with how you maximize your glycogen stores before even hitting the trail. The key is to consume adequate calories and carbohydrate at home based on your own body weight and physical activity level. You want to aim for a diet that provides roughly 40 to 65% of total calories from carbs. If you're adequately fueling at home, your glycogen stores in your muscles and liver will already be maximized and ready to go when you hit the trail. If you're dieting and eating fewer calories than your body needs, you can actually deplete your glycogen stores before you even leave the house. If you start your hike already at a depleted state, you'll already be at a disadvantage and will have a hard time catching up. Now here's a question I have for you. Do you have any idea how many calories you consume on a non-hiking day at home? If the answer to that is, I have no idea, then I'd recommend that you take a look at what you eat on a daily basis before putting that first packet of oatmeal in your bear bag. By writing down everything you eat and drink for a 24-hour time period, you'll have a baseline idea of what your body needs without the added stress such as backpacking. You might be surprised that you eat more or even less than expected, which can have a real impact on how much food you should pack in your bear bag. As an example, one of my meal planning clients thought she consumed 1,500 calories per day at home, when in reality she consumed just over 2,000 calories on non-hiking days. We reviewed what she packed in her bear bag and quickly found the reason why she kept hitting the wall. She thought she was packing extra food when she was actually packing what she consumed on a regular day. Once she bumped up her calorie intake, hitting the wall was no longer a problem for her. As part of the workbook we gave you today, we've included a copy of the 24-hour food diary to help you track what you eat and drink. If you're not a pen and paper person, there are plenty of fitness and calorie tracking apps out there that'll make this process even easier. Once you determine your baseline calorie intake, you can then use this to upsize your diet for your hiking and backpacking trips. Now you're asking, how many calories should I add? Sit tight, because I'm going to get to this topic in just a bit. Now that you've made sure your diet at home is solid, let's talk about what to eat before you hike. If you've ever been an athlete outside of hiking, you're probably aware of the term carbo loading. Many athletes fill up on a big pasta dinner the night before an event to make sure their glycogen stores are maximized. The problem is that if you do this thinking it'll help you start off the day right, you might be setting yourself up for failure. Let's say you carbo loaded the night before, but skipped breakfast because you wanted to leave super early so you could get a parking spot at the trailhead. Once you get to the trailhead, you start charging up the mountain without eating because you're so focused on getting your weekend adventure started. An hour or so into your hike, you could experience low blood sugar before your muscles even have a chance to be depleted. So what's the moral of the story? Eat your breakfast. Even if it's something small, something is better than nothing. The meal replacement recipe we've included in the workbook is a perfect solution for this type of situation. I think you're really going to love it. If you're hiking more than 60 to 90 minutes, make sure you load up on complex carbohydrates such as a bagel, oatmeal, an energy bar, granola, and maybe some fruit. By choosing complex carbohydrates, the release of glucose will be slower so that you're fueled longer after starting your hike when compared to loading up on simple sugars. Including protein and fat, maybe adding peanut butter to that bagel, will also help reduce the blood sugar spike and keep you fueled longer. 250 to 300 calories from carbohydrate are ideal to get you started, as this will cover you for that first hour on the trail. If breakfast is consumed 1 hour before hiking, the foods will be digested just enough to be used for fuel and provide sustained energy. Although this isn't always an option when you wake up in camp and need to get moving as soon as possible to get in those miles needed by the end of the day. Do your best to eat or drink something with carbohydrate as soon as you wake up, rather than after you've packed up and are already ready to leave camp. This is another time meal replacement drinks are really great. If you're not a morning person and prefer to eat once you're on the trail, drinking 8 ounces of nutrition is an easy way to get in those much-needed carbs. And finding what works best for you will take a bit of trial and error. Although, once you figure it out, you'll notice a huge difference in how your morning starts off on trail. Okay, so now you're on the trail. What should you eat while you're hiking? You've learned your lesson on previous hikes and started out by eating well days leading up to your hike and had a solid breakfast. The key to avoiding hitting the wall is to continue eating well on trail by supplementing with snacks between meals. It's almost impossible to catch up after exhausting your stockpile of carbohydrates. Then there's also the challenge of hiking suppressing your appetite, which can certainly happen. But you have to eat anyway. Meal replacement drinks, again, can really help you keep well fueled when the last thing you feel like doing is eating. I actually keep one in my hip pocket at all times, so it's easy to access when I need the nutrition boost. You'll also need to make sure you increase the amount of food packed and consumed for longer, more intense hikes, because you'll burn through your glucose stores faster the harder your body works. Now, how much carbohydrate should you eat on trail, keeping in mind that hiking is an endurance sport? As I mentioned in previous slides, the rate at which glycogen stores are used is based on the intensity of the hike, how much glycogen is already stored, the environment, and nutrition consumed. If fully stocked up and your hike is incredibly intense, meaning that you're gaining elevation while carrying a heavy pack and sweating profusely, you'll reach glycogen depletion in only 90 to 120 minutes. That's not long at all, considering most backpacking trips last much longer than that. The goal is to refuel before you reach that point. If only hiking 1 to 3 hours, a total of 30 to 60 grams of carbs should be sufficient. This is typically just a single bar or snack of some sort. If hiking more than 3 hours, staying on top of your carbohydrate intake every 60 to 90 minutes is really critical, or you hit the wall for certain unless you're enjoying a leisurely stroll. Now here's the question I'm often asked: are more carbs better? The answer to that is no. As much as you want to make sure you're well fueled for your trip, your body can only absorb 1 gram of carbohydrate per minute, or roughly 250 calories from carbohydrates per hour. This is why I suggested eating 250 calories from carbs for breakfast, because it'll get you through that first hour of your hike, giving you time to snack again before running low on fuel. To make the best use of carbs you do consume, shoot for no more than 60 grams of carbs per hour. Too much food at once can also slow the rate of digestion, which isn't helpful when you need the carbs to keep you going. This is when reading food labels is really helpful. Next time you pack for your trip, take a closer look at what's in the food you eat. That way you'll have a better idea of what and how much you'll need to meet your carb goals. By looking at the label, you'll gain a better understanding of whether the food fits under the simple carbohydrate or complex carbohydrate category. You'll know this based on the number of added sugars, which are simple sugars. If there are lots of added sugars, the food should be considered a quick energy food. If there's less added sugar and more fiber, the food should be considered a complex carbohydrate or slower energy releasing food. Now, I bet you're thinking, this is all fine and dandy, Erin, but how much am I supposed to eat? Let's say you're going out for a multi-day backpacking trip and you're not sure how much food to pack. This is when getting your calculator out and filling in your workbook is going to be really helpful, because we're going to determine exactly how many carbs your body needs based on your weight. For most backpackers, 5 to 10 grams of carbohydrate per kilogram body weight, or 2.3 to 4.5 grams of carbs per pound body weight is typically enough to stay well fueled. So what exactly does this mean in terms of how much food to pack? Let's say you're a 150-pound hiker and you need 3 grams of food. Excuse me, I got ahead of myself. So let's say you're a 150-pound hiker and you need 3 grams of carbohydrates per pound. That means that your daily need is 450 grams of carbs per day. To reach my carb goal, I typically choose meals that have 60 grams of carbs each and fill in the remaining carbs needed for the day by eating snacks in between meals. Although there are lots of hikers out there that prefer to snack all day, and this is totally fine as long as the snacks meet the total daily carb goal. Now that you know what you need to eat, you can make sure to meet this goal by reading the food labels before packing your bear bag. Now that you know how often and how much carbohydrate to eat while hiking, what does that look like in terms of real food? As you're probably aware, there are loads of products on the market. Sports drinks, energy bars, gels, and chews are just a few examples. If you choose to use these, make sure you try them at home first before taking them on the trail with you. Although, here's something to keep in mind before spending loads of money on expensive energy bars. Research has actually shown that real food works just as well. And remember to choose foods that also contain fat and protein unless you're actively hitting the wall. You don't want your blood sugar to spike and then drop again soon after eating. And here are a few examples of 30-gram carbohydrate snacks to consider while you're on the trail. Honey Stinger chews are pure sugar and are great when you're actively hitting the wall. And dried pineapple is an excellent quick energy option if you choose real food. As the fat content of the product of the food increases going down this list, the slower your blood sugar will rise, even though you've consumed that same 30 grams of simple carbohydrates via pineapple. Okay, now that was a lot to throw at you all at once. Don't worry, we've included a reference sheet towards the end of your workbook that summarizes everything I've said so far. So if you feel like you've missed something, just go back and refer to the tip sheets when you need them. But let's take a quick second to briefly summarize what's most important. While you're hiking, the goal is to maintain your blood sugar. To do that, make sure you eat every 60 to 90 minutes. If hiking more than 2 hours, try eating 30 to 60 grams of carb per hour. Don't forget to include protein and fat to reduce the rate the meal is digested, keeping you fueled longer. If you have a hard time remembering to eat, setting a timer on your watch or phone could be helpful. Be sure to eat or drink something with carbs, even if you're not hungry. Again, that meal replacement beverage recipe that I'm giving you in your workbook is a really great idea. Now the day's done, let's talk about what to eat after you hike. You've done your best to feed your body all day, but sometimes it's just not enough, and you still have to replace what was used up. Muscles are slow to replace glycogen at about an average of only 5% per hour. That means it can take 20 hours to fully replete your glycogen stores. The body can do this on its own within 24 hours, but you don't usually have that kind of time when backpacking day after day. Just like timing when to eat while hiking is important, it's just as important, if not more so, after hiking. Plan to eat carbohydrate-rich foods within 15 to 60 minutes of stopping at the end of the day. This isn't always ideal when you're tired and all you want to do is set up camp for the night. Take a few minutes to sit down and eat something. You'll be thankful that you did the following day. Your muscles not only need glycogen, but also protein to help repair and recover for the next day. And just to geek out even a little bit more, try to include 10 grams of protein with those 30 grams of carbs you're eating. If you're still awake after eating dinner, try to eat another snack just before going to bed to take full advantage of the recovery time. And here are a few protein and carb combos that might work well for you. Nut butter added to oatmeal, jerky with dried fruit, tuna with pita chips. And this is another example when reading food labels is important. After reading a food labels at home, you'll be able to come up with combinations that really work the best for you. Now I'm going to switch gears a little and focus on the importance of hydration while backpacking and how it relates to hitting the wall. When you tap into your glycogen reserves, water is released with it and lost via sweat, which puts you at greater risk of dehydration if you don't keep up with the demand. Did you know that losing as little as 2% total body weight via sweat can impair your athletic performance? If you're a 150-pound hiker, that's only a loss of 3 pounds of your total body weight. And at that amount of water weight loss, you could be considered dehydrated. And if you're following along in your workbook, go ahead and do the math to see how little weight you can afford to lose before being considered dehydrated. And maybe keep this number in mind the next time you weigh yourself at home after you return from hiking. While backpacking, you don't usually have access to a scale to be able to determine how much weight you have lost during the trip. There are a number of warning signs that you can look for. Thirst, unusual fatigue, lightheadedness, headache, dark urine, dry mouth, frequent urination, and rapid heartbeat are all signs of dehydration. Although thirst is considered an indicator of dehydration, thirst isn't always a good indicator of dehydration. There tends to be lots of distractions while you're hiking. Thirst signals can be easily missed or disregarded, and you'll likely agree the water isn't always readily available when you need it. Even if you're thirsty, it might not be there to quench your thirst. When enough water is lost via sweat to trigger thirst, dehydration has likely already started to occur. So how much fluid do we need in a day? There are a number of factors that need to be considered. Is it hot or cold outside? Are you at sea level at high altitude? Do you have a petite or heavy-set body frame? Do you have a fast or slow metabolism? How intense are your hikes? Are you a light sweater or heavy sweater? Does your diet include foods that contain water? And how much do you urinate? Because there are so many factors that affect hydration status, there's no one fluid intake recommendation that will suffice for everyone. A way to gauge how much fluid you should drink while backpacking is to consider how sweaty you get while hiking. For less intense hikes that don't cause you to sweat much, drink 4 to 6 ounces every 15 minutes or half a liter to a liter per hour. Now let's say you're on a more strenuous hike or it's hot outside and your clothes and skin are visibly wet. You want to drink 8 to 12 ounces every 15 minutes or a liter to a liter and a half per hour. Now let's say you're working really hard hiking up an intense trail on a summer day. You want to drink up to 2 liters per hour to make up for the water loss via sweat. And just as you have to replenish glycogen stores, fluid and electrolyte replacement is just as important after hiking. So now your day is done and you're in camp chowing down on those carbs to replenish your glycogen stores. Adequately rehydrating is just as important. Water is a good thirst quencher, but not a good rehydrator on its own. Water will only be retained if consumed with foods or beverages containing salt and other minerals. Pretzels, chips, crackers, electrolyte mixes such as Gatorade or Noon tablets are all great options for sweaty hikers. In most cases, an adequate amount of salt can be consumed in a hiker's diet without needing to consider using salt tablets. To fully rehydrate, you need to ingest 150% of the water weight lost. This allows you to replace what was lost via sweat and bodily fluids while also having an extra on board the following morning. That way you don't start out the day behind the ball. The goal is to also fully rehydrate within 6 hours of stopping for the day. So how much exactly is 150%? Here's another time you're going to want to pull out a calculator really quick and follow along in the workbook. Let's say you're that 150-pound hiker that lost 2% body weight or 3 pounds of water weight loss. For each pound of water weight loss, 16 ounces of water needs to be consumed. So you multiply the weight loss by 16 and you'll get 48, which is the number of ounces of water lost. Now multiply the amount of water lost by 1.5 or 150% and you'll get 72 ounces, or the amount of water required to fully rehydrate your body. That's 2.2 liters of fluid you'll need to consume before morning if you want to start out the day fully rehydrated. That's a lot of fluid before bed. And this is why staying on top of fluid intake while hiking is so important, so you don't have to play catch up at the end of the day. And drinking large volumes of water all at once also puts you at risk for something called hyponatremia. Overdrinking can induce hyponatremia, which is low sodium in your blood due to dilution, and can be extremely dangerous. The signs of overhydrating include bloated stomach, puffy fingers and ankles, a bad headache, lethargy, confusion, and in the worst case scenario, seizures, coma, and even death can occur. So going back to carbohydrates and water, it's important to consume both. Sports drinks can be a nice way to help rehydrate and replenish glycogen stores at the end of a long day on trail. However, this isn't always the best option during the day while actively hiking. Sports drinks with more than 14 to 17 grams of carbs per 8 ounces will slow the rate of gastric emptying, which slows the rate the water is absorbed. Now keep these numbers in mind the next time you buy electrolyte drink mixes for your hikes. If you've fallen behind during the day and you're trying to catch up, sports drinks may not be the best option for rehydrating quickly. Now that you know there's more to drinking water than just staying hydrated, here are a number of tips to help you stay ahead of the game. Know where to find water, have drink mixes available, If you're more likely to drink water that's mixed with something, be sure to mix it up. Prehydrate well before even heading out for the day. Plan to drink more when heavy sweating is anticipated. Pack adequate fluid in your backpack. Think ahead to determine how many water bottles or bladders you're going to need. Train yourself to drink more while hiking than you drink at home. Check your body weight after hiking. This will give you an indication of how well you're refueled and rehydrated. Remember that full rehydration requires not only water, but also sodium. So make sure to include salty foods in your diet. Drink by schedule, not thirst. Setting a timer on my watch or paying attention to mileage works really well for me. And most importantly, know the warning signs of dehydration so you can catch it early. So backing up a little bit and looking at the big picture, the overall goal while hiking is to consume adequate carbs and to stay well hydrated. And by doing this, you can avoid hitting the wall. You've got this. As I mentioned a few times throughout the talk, you can refer back to the Hitting the Wall tip sheet we've included in your workbook. And there's also hydration tip sheets as well that you can refer back to. So let's say you didn't plan as well as you hoped and you did hit the wall. Now what do? If you want your trip to continue, you have to stop, eat, and recover. As soon as you feel the warning signs, stop hiking and eat some simple carbohydrates like jelly beans, gummy bears, maybe a sports drink, gels, or chews to quickly bring your blood sugar back up. Make sure to drink lots of water with these, as water is needed to get the glucose into your bloodstream quickly. Remember, water is also necessary to store carbs as glycogen in your muscles and liver. If you don't have a source of simple carbohydrates on you, energy bars and solid foods are just fine. They just take a little longer to digest, which will slow your recovery from hitting the wall. Here's the important part, and likely the most challenging as a hiker: stay put and allow your body to recover. It's definitely easier said than done when you have miles to go before reaching camp for the night, but your body is telling you it needs to stop. If and when you do bonk, be sure to ask for help. Remember that during a bonk, you might not be thinking clearly. It's a good idea to ask for help if this is the case. Have someone keep an eye on you as you recover, especially if you do choose to continue. Use the buddy system to make sure you're hiking safely and not potentially putting yourself in dangerous situations. On your part, pay close attention to your surroundings and keep checking in with yourself frequently. So now that you're an expert on the signs and symptoms of bonking, what to do when it happens, help your fellow backpacker if he or she hits the wall. Keep an eye on them. Don't be afraid to ask how they're doing. If you can spare a bit of food, share it with hikers that may not have come as prepared as you. This small gesture could save their life by preventing them from putting themselves in a dangerous situation. Now, is it possible to recover and continue? Most of the time, you're not likely to experience complete glycogen depletion because you're usually in a situation where you can consume at least a little something to keep your blood glucose up. Your brain also does a pretty good job of keeping your body in check before allowing it to self-destruct. If you take the time to stop, eat, and recover, you can likely partially recover and continue your hike, albeit probably at a slower pace and reduced mileage. But here's the question: is it wise to continue hiking after hitting the wall? If your only symptom is fatigue and it starts to improve after resting, refueling, and rehydrating, you'll likely be safe to continue. If you can't seem to think clearly or feel that continuing your hike will put you in danger, it's probably best to set up camp and call it a day. Call for help if possible, and continue refueling and rehydrating while staying put. The trail will always be there waiting for you to return next time. It's really not worth the risk of potential injury. Okay, so you've put all of this into action and the things you've learned from today's talk, and you're still hitting the wall. It's time to make adjustments to your plan. If you're still finding that you're either under or overpacking food in your bear bag, this is when keeping a hiking food journal is key. We've included a copy of this in your workbook as well to help you get started. This might feel a little cumbersome at first, but I promise you're going to be really glad you put in the effort. The idea is that you write down everything that goes into your bear bag before leaving your house. Include how many calories you packed and a little bit about the trip itself. Remember to make sure you pack more than what you consume on a daily basis at home based on the food diary you completed early on. Ramping up calories can vary greatly based on the number of factors, including the number of miles hiked, how difficult the terrain is, how heavy your backpack is, the weather conditions, etc. At the end of the trip, go back and write down how much food you brought home, if any. Did you take too little, too much, or just the right amount of food? How'd you feel? Write down additional details about the hike, the difficulty of the terrain, time on your feet, the weight of your backpack, and make note of anything that you do differently next time. After completing the journal a few times, you'll be able to really fine-tune what works best for you for particular hikes at particular times of the year. So I want to close today's talk by giving you a huge pat on the back because as a backpacker, you are a tremendous athlete. If you take anything away from today's talk, I want you to remember, don't just eat well. Put a little extra effort into your hiking food before, during, and after your trips, and it will totally pay off. Stay on top of your hydration strategy. Don't fall behind because it's almost impossible to catch up. If you feel like you're going to hit the wall, stop, eat, and recover. And finally, record your experiences so that you can fine-tune what works best for you. And after a bit of trial and error, you're going to feel really great on the trail, time and time again. So I'm going to switch back over to video, and I can take any questions you have. And Pam, was there anything, questions in the chat box that I need to start with? You're muted.
Yeah, I'm muted here. Yep, there's a couple questions here in the chat. We'll start with those, and then I do see there's a couple people with their hand raised. So we'll start. Bridget Berger asks, are there recipes for dehydrated food for people with histamine intolerance?
And I think I actually saw the Facebook post today, and I meant to look it up. I don't have experience with histamine intolerance, so that's actually something I'm going to do a little research with. So I can't give you a good answer on that.
Okay. Oh, she also asked, what about people that eat ketogenic or low carb?
Do we have recipes that are ketogenic? If that's the question, we do not, because I do focus on glycogen stores and replacing with carbohydrates. So ours are high fat because that's my style is ultralight. So it makes it a lot higher fat than a lot of the other recipes because our specialty is making things as high calorie, as low volume as possible. So they do tend to be quite a bit different than your traditional recipes, but they are still adequately a source of carbohydrates. So they're not ketogenic.
So do you have like an opinion or some research about like long distance hiking or even regular hiking, trying to do that on a ketogenic or low carb diet?
That's a big topic. I'm not a huge, I know there's a lot of hikers out there that really love it. And actually, I was previously a ketogenic dietitian in my previous life. So I do have quite a bit of knowledge about it. It can be done. It just has to be done safely. I think you need to have a backup plan. So if you do hit the wall, like I've been talking about in the class, if you do burn through your glycogen stores, you need to have a backup plan. I haven't tried it myself, so I don't know how I would feel if I were to do keto, but I know a lot of people do. I would just say, just be smart about it and have a backup plan if you were to give it a try.
Great. Jay says, I will be the base camp cook for a trekking crew. Dinner the night before they leave will be pasta, salad, and dessert. But what is an ideal breakfast to fuel them for their first day?
Oh gosh, that could be any number of things. You could do, well, of course, the oatmeal is really easy, but one of my recommendations is not just do oatmeal because it's just carbs, is to do oatmeal, add nuts, add some shredded coconut, add some dried fruit, use whole milk powder. I mean, really beef it up with a lot of other things instead of just the instant packet of oatmeal, which I think a lot of hikers, when I used to eat that when I first started, is I was hungry 30 minutes later. It's just not substantial enough. Another one I do, my big belief too, is I eat what I normally eat at home. I just do it in a dehydrated form. So I've started eating cold cereal. Like I've got bran flakes with, again, some pecans and sunflower seeds, whole milk powder. I think I had apricots recently in it. Another favorite is freeze-dried yogurt with granola and berries is really delicious. It's super high calorie, super high protein, very low volume. So there's any number of things that you can do. I would just add a lot of extra things to it so that it keeps you going strong in the morning.
Great. Lyle asks, are liquid-based carbs going to utilize as well by the body as whole foods?
They're typically, because there's more simple carbohydrates, they're probably going to get used faster. So because there's not going to be a lot of fiber typically in liquid carbs, and the fiber is what slows down the digestion. So that's one of the things to keep in mind. If you do a smoothie that has lots of fiber in it, it's going to slow down the energy, burning it up. So is that I think that's the question, is how rapidly they're, okay. Yeah. It has a lot to do with fiber.
Okay. So maybe a little more quick acting. Bridget also asked, what happens if you overeat on the trail? My experience, you just don't feel very good.
I just don't feel very good. I don't usually have a problem overeating. So yeah, most hikers are usually really hungry, so it's a little bit harder to overeat.
Let's see. Mary says, what liquid carbs do you suggest? Carnation instant breakfast works for me, but I love some healthier options.
That's another one where I really love taking smoothies. We tried to do the Catalina Island Trail last week, but long story short, it didn't work out. But my favorite breakfast then, I did a blueberry oat smoothie, and all it was is whole milk powder, freeze-dried blueberries that I put in the spice grinder and powdered them up. And I put almonds in there and powdered them. I put whole oats in there and powdered them, and chia seeds. And it's all normal food, and it's super nutritious, tons of calories without all the added sugar. I use a lot of the Carnation's breakfast, but you kind of get bored with it. There's only so much you can do with it. So I do that a lot. And again, I love the freeze-dried yogurt. So I'll powder up the yogurt bites and add in freeze-dried fruit and all those kinds of things as another smoothie too.
Yeah, you've got a lot of great drink recipes on your website too. So
I use them all the time, because there's those times where, like this particular trip we just did, it's a kind of a funny story. I was starting to hit the wall because we were right in the middle of a climb. I was super tired. And I was like, oh my gosh, I'm not going to make it to the top. So I pulled out my hip belt pocket, like I said during the talk. It was, I think it was our toffee coffee. It has caffeine in it. And I pounded it. It was 8 ounces. And then I charged right on up. And Chris was like, where did that second wind come from? I was like, it's nutrition, man. And I felt awesome. And it got me through the rest of the climb. So yeah, I totally believe in them.
Yeah. Yeah, that's something I definitely am going to start integrating, because I know when I start working harder, especially like multi-day, multi-week trips, I start to lose my appetite. Yeah. And it's hard for me to just eat. And so I definitely will be trying a lot more of your different drink recipes.
Yeah, I keep at least one with me at all time for like an emergency even. Let's say you run out of food and you're not going to get back to the car in time. You have one there to hold you over. And they don't weigh anything and they don't take up space.
Sure. So yeah, Kevin, this is being recorded. I will send out a link to everybody with a link to our YouTube channel that will have this, and then also a link to the workbook as well, in case anybody missed it, probably sometime tomorrow. Yep, a lot of information. So we have this recorded. So share it out with everybody and review it as needed. Let's see. Jay asks, what quick tips do you have for a person that has had gastric bypass?
Oh, we actually have low sugar recipes just for those people. We've actually got quite a few hikers in our community that have had gastric bypass, and they use a lot of our low sugar recipes. They take out a lot of the fat, because I know you have dumping syndrome if you have a lot of fat in your diet, and they do really low volume. So it tends to be more snacking on like higher protein kinds of things. So it just takes a little bit of adjusting your diet a little bit. And it can be, we're vegetarians, so it takes a little extra work to getting an extra protein. So it depends on probably the person that has had the bypass, how much protein they can get in, because I know that's really important for those guys. But small volume snacking, that kind of thing.
Great. Jacqueline asks, can you give us an example of a typical day on trail for you during a multi-day hike? So Jacqueline, I'm assuming you're asking like typical day of like what she would eat.
Sounds like it. And this is a huge topic I didn't go over today, is the 2 pound per day rule. I don't believe in it at all. So that's a whole nother class in itself. I give a backpacking food 101 class where I talk about the 2 pound per day rule and how it's my least favorite rule. Reason being is that the amount of nutrition you can get in 2 pounds a day varies greatly. And answering this question, last week when we did the Catalina Trail, I only packed 3,000 calories because we were only doing 8 to 10 miles per day. It wasn't a really long, strenuous hike. It was more of a vacation for us. So I packed it was right around 1.5 pounds of food. So had I packed a full 2 pounds, it would have been way more than I needed. Whereas when I was on the PCT and the AT, I packed well over 5,000 and 6,000 calories. Right. And I'm pretty good I can do 150 calories per ounce is kind of my go-to when I'm packing my food. And I was able to get that in just over 2 pounds. So a day for me, a typical day, I don't really have a typical, because I base it on whatever trip I'm doing. So like just thinking back to last week, the 3,000 calorie one, Like I was saying, let's say that day I had the oat smoothie for breakfast. I usually have 2 snacks because by the time breakfast and lunch is, you've got several hours in there. So like I was talking in the talk, try to eat every 60 to 90 minutes. So I have some kind of snack. I don't eat bars anymore because I just can't stand the taste of them. I've eaten hundreds and hundreds of bars. So now I make my own trail mix, and I have tons of those recipes on the website too. Really good about mixing like really weird ingredients together. So it's kind of fun. I do things like cello wisp, I do cheese, those kinds of things as a snack. Then lunch is typically no cook. So it might be hummus or bean dip or, oh gosh, I'm trying to think what else, some kind of spread or some kind of just add some water, mix it up. It's done almost immediately. And then again, I'd have similar snacks in the afternoon, and then dinners, usually some kind of like pasta base, couscous. Oh gosh, I've got so many different things. I forget what, like our sun-dried tomato pesto pasta is amazing. So that's one of my favorites. And then I'm a huge dessert person. So I typically always have a dessert too. So there's some kind of sweet thing that I've made at the end.
Yeah, and you say like you do have some really fun trail mix ones. I think my favorite is like Don't Knock It or
Oh,
something.
that one. Yeah, don't knock it till you try it.
Beans and pecans and pretzels and
it's such a weird combo, but it's amazing.
Yep.
And then some of them, like our cherry trail mix, is 3 ingredients. It's pineapple, cherries, and macadamia nuts. That's all. It's super easy. It's super high calorie and delicious. So I mean, it doesn't have to be complicated.
And it'll get you away from the bars. Yep.
Yeah.
To do that. Let's see. Diane asks, have you ever foraged or hunt for food while on the trail? If so, what tips do you have regarding that?
I haven't. And actually, I'm planning on trying to sprout and forage this summer when we do the Colorado Trail. That's actually on my to-do list. I've never done it before, other than getting berries along the way, that kind of thing. But actually, that's a new project that I'm looking forward to. So I can report back after July.
All right, so Jeff Osgood asks, how do you tell the difference between shakiness, lethargy from a diet issue versus altitude sickness? Anything diet or hydration can do for altitude?
Not sure that I'm quite following you. Although at altitude, go ahead.
I was gonna say, let's just stick with the first question. How do you tell the difference between shakiness / lethargy from a diet issue versus altitude sickness?
Well, I guess one thing you do is think about how much you've eaten. Have you stayed on top of eating regularly, but you're still feeling symptoms of not feeling well? Then that might be more due to the altitude sickness. If you haven't eaten, then it may be more due to the diet. I would kind of think of it that way first. And also, just since we're talking about altitude, you actually need a higher percentage of carbohydrates at altitude because they're more efficient than fat. So when you are at altitude, try to switch up and add more carbs to your diet when you're up there. Although the other side is that lots of times at altitude, you lose your appetite. So sometimes it's easier just to eat a higher fat diet just so you can get calories in. So that's one of those kinds of things I've learned with time to see, like at what altitude do I really lose my appetite, and kind of how do I adjust my diet so I do feel good. But it all goes back to eat something, whether it's high fat or carbs or not, just eat something.
Okay. Jason asks, would you recommend any changes to your guidance because of hiking at elevation? I subscribe to your service, but thought I'd ask here if I can hike the High Sierra Trail.
I think I may have answered a little bit of that about making sure you eat plenty of carbs. And altitude where that's affected is more like 14,000 feet plus is when that really starts changing.
Right. Jen Thompson says, do you make your own dehydrated yogurt? Or where do you find it? I've tried and it's not been successful.
No, it's terrible. I don't recommend. Dairy is not something you should dehydrate on your. I know a lot of people do it, but no, I buy freeze dried. And unfortunately, it's always sold out right now. I don't know if it's a COVID thing, but I buy it from Outdoor Pantry is my favorite brand. It's super high fat. It's really yummy. It powders really well. Thrive Life is another company that sells it. But if you can't get it from those two, you can get the baby yogurt bites in the baby aisle at the grocery store. So that's another alternative. They only come with a small serving per little bag. So it takes a lot of bags to actually get a decent serving for an adult. But if you can't find them online, then that's an easy place to get them.
Bridget asks, is there almond milk or cashew milk powder? No other ingredients. Do you know of a product like that?
Almond milk powder, yes. It is harder to find. I'm not familiar with cashew milk powder, but almond milk powder there is. Ecomil, ECOMIL is available on Amazon. It's pretty expensive because I think it's shipped from outside the US. But the cheapest place and easiest place to get it is if you live in a larger city that's an Asian market, as they usually sell all kinds. So that's where we're living in the van now on the road. So unfortunately, I don't get to have access to it like I used to. But if you do live in a larger city, that's typically where you can find it.
Yeah, when they also asked about soy milk powder, pecan milk powder.
Soy milk powder is available. It's better than, I think it's something like it's better than milk, or it's better than something is a brand that's out there. You can find it on Amazon too. It's pretty readily available.
Right. Tom Clark asks, I'm doing a Sierra trip this summer, 10 to 15 miles a day. I'm 155 pounds with a 20 to 30 pound pack weight. How many calories a day should I target? You need your workbook.
Well, this is kind of why my whole backpacking 101 talk is a whole nother story, because every single hiker is totally different. So your age, your height, your sex, how heavy your pack is, all those things are different. Let's say you're already an athlete at home and you already consume 2,500 calories, whereas somebody else that's not as athletic at home only consumes 1,200 calories, but is the same height and the same weight, that kind of thing. So they need to have a different calorie level, even though they're built similarly. So I don't give out calorie recommendations because everybody's so different. That's why during the talk, I really recommend writing down exactly what you eat on a regular daily basis to see what is your baseline, like where should you start. Like the example I gave you, I had a customer and it was easy for us to figure out why she was hitting the wall, because she just was eating less than she ate a day at home. And then start tracking even your day hikes, like how many calories did you, like how many snacks did you take? Did you feel good? Were you too tired? And that kind of thing. So it's usually after 3 or 4 hikes, you can really fine tune what's going to work for you, because every hike is different too. So the High Sierra Trail is going to be different from, like when I did the Oregon Coast Trail, it's flat. So I can't really say. It's more of you figuring out what's going to work for you and just learning from experience. So sorry, because I could tell you 5,000 calories and it could be way too much.
Yeah, Carmina, thanks for the shout out about leave no trace. Carmina says, do your best not to prepare too much food for your meal. If you do, please pack it out. Do not dump it in the wilderness, leave no trace behind. And I will also say, my hiking partner is a gigantor of a man with a bottomless pit. Find a hiking partner like that who will eat anything that you don't eat.
Right.
Great way to not waste any food.
Right.
Yep. Please be conscious of, all of that. Don't want to be leaving anything out there that doesn't belong there. Adam says, I get cold around 2 a.m. every night on the trail. I eat a big dinner. Any suggestions?
Eat something with high fat before you go to bed, because fat takes so much longer to be digested, and it actually will increase your core temperature because it generates heat. So something you could do is like having just a packet of peanut butter right before you go to bed could be helpful, or just something with some kind of fat in it before you go to bed could help a little bit and see. Or if you wake up cold, have some peanut butter really quick, if it happens that late in, because probably by then you would have digested, depending on what time you had the peanut butter, it would have digested quite a bit. So that's typically will help. That's a good thing to have another one of those backups when you're at altitude and you're at risk of being a little bit colder than you're used to, is having a backup fat plan.
Or maybe one of those little single serve peanut butter packet things.
But keep them in your pocket because they'll get hard when it's cold. So if you're sleeping in your puffy or something like that, keep them close to your body.
Let's see here. So Craig, we already talked a little bit about yogurt bites. Lyle, do you recommend taking a multivitamin on longer hikes or through hikes? That's a good question.
I take one primarily because the dehydrating food, the process actually it takes away up to 50% of the vitamins. So, and also for every one cup of fresh fruit, you have to eat half a cup of dehydrated fruit, and that's a lot of dehydrated fruit. So once you start thinking about, like, if I'm going to eat an apple, I have to have a half a cup of dehydrated apple. Most of us aren't going to eat that much to even get just a regular serving size. So that in itself, you're going to eat less vitamins and minerals that way. Just the dehydration process does it. Freeze-dried foods, however, retain 97% of their nutrition. So if you do have a heavier freeze-dried diet, then you are going to get more nutrition, but I like to just cover my bases. If you're going to be going into town really regularly and eating meals, having like a salad or a fruit bowl or those kind of things is going to help cover yourself. But especially women, making sure you have enough iron is really important, because you could actually feel tired all the time thinking that it's the trail when actually you're anemic. And that's something you could prevent and feel much better just by eating more iron. So I don't recommend an iron supplement, but I could recommend reading the labels and making sure you're getting iron.
Gotcha. So Buzz, I see you have your hand up. If you have a question, feel free to put in the chat and we'll get to it, unless that's you just waving hi or something. So Bridget also asked, how much water do I need in high altitude? And then she asked another question about what bags do you use because of the plastic that goes into your system? And I'm not sure if she means system as in packing system or system as in body system.
Okay. Hydration at altitude, you actually need to drink even more. But what's that?
She says body system.
Oh, okay. So hydration at altitude, you're actually at risk of becoming dehydrated even more because you lose water through like breathing. So the colder it is, like your body needs to warm the air and that kind of thing. So you actually lose more moisture just breathing, and you tend to sweat a lot under your clothes. And you may not realize that because you're typically at altitude, usually you're carrying ice axe or using ropes or, snowshoes or something. So you tend to be sweating a lot under your clothes. And a lot of times you don't want to take your gloves off. You don't want to like get your Nalgene bottle out or those kind of things. So you tend to not want to drink. So you're at greater risk. So you just want to make sure you really stay on top of it. Again, going back, I don't have a specific number of how much to drink. It's more of, again, watching your weight, watching how much you're sweating, and using kind of those guidelines. As for not using plastic, there's a variety of things we're actually working on. I haven't found the perfect solution yet. I've trail tested some silicone bags. I haven't found the perfect one yet. The ones I have been really absorbing the smell of the food, which I've actually had to throw away 2 of them because they make the van smell. We only have 60 square feet, so it doesn't take much to cause a smell. And I had to throw the last 2 ones away because by the time I got home from the trip, it had already been in there and it just smelled horrible. But from talking to other people, it sounds like other brands work better. So I'm just in the process of ordering those. And then there's compostable bags we're working on trail testing right now that are biodegradable. So we're trail testing those. If we end up liking those, we're actually going to offer them on our website because you can only buy them commercially, which is really unfortunate, but we're hoping to provide that as something for backpackers to use. Then there's always the cooking in your pot and having to clean up and just, like you said, the leave no trace, trying to do your best that way. But I haven't come up with a really good solution of plastic yet.
So I've got a friend who's a long distance hiker who the first night he'll have a backpacker pantry type meal, and he'll reuse that bag over and over again. He'll pour stuff out of that, put it in that because he can put his hot water in there and just kind of clear it out and swish it around, and he'll just use that to cook his meals for a good stretch. So
yeah, those work too. Any of the plastic bags, because I used to freezer bag cook, everything went into plastic. And after I counted how many bags I used on the PCT and the AT, I was like, it was terrible. So now I wash and reuse everything until they fall apart. But I'm really hoping these compostable ones work out. So we'll let everybody know if that works or not.
Yeah, that'd be great. Yeah, I feel the same way. And we have some other people who are concerned about that, where it's like, yeah, it's a lot. But when you start thinking about carrying anything bigger or bulkier, the other thing is you just start adding a lot of weight to your pack if you're doing a bunch of, bulkier like Tupperware, or like, I know some people get like the little gelato ice cream things that they'll use for like cooking things up in, or just doing no cook stuff. But yeah, compostable bags would be great. I think that's kind of Bridget did ask, what brand did you use for the bags that you ended up having to throw out?
Homelux, I think HOMELUX, I think was the brand. I just found them on Amazon because our meals are so tiny. I had a hard time finding bags small enough. because most of the bags are gigantic, and these were, I want to say they were 16 ounces, and they're still way too big. So that's why I chose this particular brand, but Home Lux, I think, is the brand.
Great. Well, I think that's pretty much all we have for questions, and it is a little bit after 8 o'clock, but Erin, I just want to say thank you so much for coming out and being on our Trailmaster webinar. And I definitely suggest everybody go out to the website, backcountryfoodie.com, become a member, subscribe to her services. Awesome recipes. I've been using them on my big hikes for the last couple of years. So give you some great ideas to even just run with and get you thinking about some combinations you can start doing. And she has her own classes that she's putting on regularly, just a plethora of resources. So Bridget asked if there's a newsletter or Facebook page that they can join. Can they get that on your website?
So we have a Facebook page and Instagram. So if you just look for Backcountry Foodie, we're also have a YouTube channel. So you can go there. We're now on an every other week schedule, filming finally. Took us a while to get on a regular schedule, but we've got a regular schedule there. And then we have a newsletter. So if you go onto our website, you can sign up for that. And then your workbook, you're going to get, we actually have a discount code for you guys. So if you can save 20% if you want to give us a try, it's IDTA 20 if you want to try. We have a 30-day money back guarantee. So if you don't like it, then we don't ask, but you can give us a try. And you can always email me, Erin@backcountryfoodie.com. I truly love backpacking food. This is what I do full time. I can't imagine doing anything else. So I feel really fortunate to be able to do my professional career, and what I love is living in the backcountry. So that's what I do.
We all get to benefit because I'm not that creative or that good of a cook. So
yeah. When I do private consulting too. So if you're really like, just tell me what to eat, Erin, like I do that too. So that's a whole nother level of service too. And we have three other coaches that like the person was asking about the histamine. I don't have experience with that, but we do have another coach that has experience with GI things and diabetes and all those. We have another nutrition coach that's really good about like elite athletes. So if somebody wants to do a fastest known time, I'm a slow hiker. I like to just enjoy it. So I'm not an elite person, but we have a dietitian that can help with somebody that wants to do that kind of thing. We have another dietitian that's also a through hiker. So she's got tons of tips on how to resupply and all those kinds of things. So we have a staff of 10 now. Of people that are helping, so awesome. People that are writing content for us, social media. So it's really exciting. We're doing good stuff.
Yeah, very cool. All right, everybody, thank you so much. And so it looks like Bridget is probably going to look you up, looking about the histamine intolerance stuff. So
awesome.
Okay, everybody, thanks, Erin. Everybody have a great night.
All right, thanks everybody.